Today, I'll be analyzing a character's psychological disorder in The Soloist by Joe Wright. The film is set in modern Los Angeles and spends much of its time in the poverty-stricken areas there. Journalist Steve Lopez is trying to find a new story when he stumbles across a homeless man named Nathaniel Ayers who seems to be playing the violin extremely well despite it only having 2 strings. We later learn from Lopez that this homeless man was once a child prodigy who grew up in LA and attended Juilliard at one point but later dropped out. With this information, Lopez believes he has a story and tries to understand Ayers, allowing us to see what happened to Ayers that caused him to be homeless. Ayers suffers from schizophrenia, a brain disorder caused by the enlargement of ventricles in the brain and usually causes the individual to suffer from a variety of symptoms including hallucinations, fright, disordered thought, hearing voices, and etc. With multiple of these symptoms combined, the patient usually has a decrease in integration with reality, seeing the world differently. There are 2 key moments in Ayers' early life where the disorder takes over and becomes a catalyst to where he is now. The first is seen in his flashback to his teenage years. Here we see Ayers moving into Juilliard for the first time, excited to be living on his own and performing on stage. However, as time goes on, we see that Ayers' schizophrenia slowly begins to create voices in his head that eventually convince him that those around him are turning hostile towards him, causing his performance to deteriorate in the orchestra due to the fear of those around him. When he tries to call home to his sister early on to get help, knowing the voices and the fear are getting stronger, it is of no use as we see Ayers running off stage before a performance in fear hiding in a closet. Although we don't see it, we are to believe that Ayers dropped out of Juilliard and moved in with his sister where the second critical event happened.
Hide from me here.
Here we see Ayers' sister, Mary, calling him upstairs from the basement to drink some soup. Ayers remains silent after Mary calls to him and she goes to investigate. While Mary expects Ayers to be in bed, he is not and comes out from behind a curtain. Here we see that the disease has deteriorated Ayers even more as he begins to mumble incoherently and believes that Mary is trying to poison him with the soup, even though we see she clearly is not when he feeds him the soup and she consumes it. This incoherent mumbling and distorted thought of his own sister trying to kill him is from schizophrenia and eventually makes Ayers finally lash out against his sister and run away from home, putting him in the position where we see him in the beginning of the movie, someone who excessively talks all of his thoughts and rarely listens in a conversation, and also one who's afraid of touch. Because these disturbances have affected Ayers continuously for more than 6 months, he is diagnosable with schizophrenia. Something else to note is that unlike other schizophrenic individuals, Ayers does not see himself as a higher being. Instead, Ayers believes that Lopez is his god, as Lopez tries to get Ayers back on his feet and return him to the child prodigy he once was. This is made evident when Ayers reprimands Lopez's friend, Graham, during a cello lesson with him when Graham tells Ayers of God. This is where Ayers states that Graham has a false god and the only god Ayers has is Lopez.
Mr. Steve Lopez is my god. What? Skywriter for Los Angeles, higher power flying around the wings like an angel. Mr. Steve Lopez is my mic!
Because the movie is set in modern day, he's easily diagnosed with this disorder. However, Ayers no longer believes he has the disorder like when he made the phone call home. He even lashes out at Lopez and threatens him with his life when he finds and reads the papers to his apartment and they say he is diagnosed with schizophrenia.
If I ever see you again, I'll cut you open.
The best way to treat this disorder would be through antipsychotic medication that would get rid of the voices and delusions that plague Ayers, along with psychotherapy to build relationships with others again. However, medicine and proper rehabilitation may prove to be difficult in the movie when we see Lopez going back to the shelter that has medical staff on board. Clearly, working in an area that is heavily poverty-stricken has affected the staff, as one of them tells Lopez that not only will he not coerce Ayers into accepting treatment, everyone here is sick, and that Ayers' symptoms will be left untreated like everyone else here. However, unconventional treatment is at hand as Lopez flies Mary over to come and visit with Ayers. After some reconciliation, Ayers seems to be able to be less affected by his disorder, his words not so rapid and expressing every thought he thinks of, and even physically touches Lopez in the form of a handshake, showing improvement in his condition from when they originally met. I think that the movie does a great job creating a character that shows many of the actual symptoms of schizophrenia while showing that schizophrenics are not monsters or raised in unusual backgrounds that the media and film stigmatize. The movie shows that schizophrenia can happen to talented people and that the people with schizophrenia can be helped and should not be stigmatized as lost causes that are often shunned by society. The disorder may be harder to be diagnosed in developing countries because they have a higher tolerance for these symptoms. Because films are widely available and entertaining to the public with high production value, what is contained in them usually stays intact in people's minds. Negative portrayals of things like disorders create lasting negative impressions. The Soloist is a film that tries to put schizophrenia in a realistic point of view and shows the struggles and hardships that a person with the disease can face and show that getting better with the disease is possible.